Tonight, firefighters battle a massive fire in North York.
There was a heavy volume of flames they had to deal with, and of course, as a consequence, a very significant amount of smoke.
I heard people screaming and people wanted to jump.
22 fire trucks and almost 100 firefighters are on scene at the 5-alarm blaze near Jane and Finch. We'll have the latest. Plus,
you see everybody trying to address it because it is such a rampant problem.
new technology is on the way to filter out those frustrating spam calls. But will it be enough to stop them? And Don Cherry's departure means Saturday nights will never be the same for hockey fans across the country, leaving everyone asking, what's next? Good evening, I'm Talia Ricci. We begin in North York tonight, where a 5-alarm fire enveloped multiple floors of an apartment building and sent flames shooting into the sky. Our Kelda Yoon is at the scene at Gosford Boulevard and Shoreham Drive near Jane and Finch. Kelda, firefighters have finally got the upper hand on this fire, but it'll be some time before residents can return.
That's right, Talia. It will definitely take some time to determine exactly how many of them can return. Dozens of residents were evacuated and loaded onto about half a dozen TTC buses earlier, and that's where they've spent their entire evening. Now they will soon be transported to the Driftwood Community Center, which has opened its doors with assistance from the Red Cross in order to provide temporary shelter for these residents who were forced out. Now, crews right now, they're going floor to floor, suite to suite, making sure that those residents who have remained inside their units are doing okay. And there is some good news tonight. The one person who was taken to hospital is doing okay, is in stable condition. Now, this was a massive fire that quickly escalated from a 2-alarm to a 5-alarm fire. It happened around 5:30 tonight. It started on the 7th floor, quickly escalated and spread to the 8th and 9th floors. Those were the floors that sustained the most damage. It took crews about 4 hours before they declared it under control, and it is right now deemed under control finally after 4 hours. At its height, about 100 firefighters and 22 trucks were involved. 5 people were treated on scene. One person, as I mentioned earlier, taken to hospital but is doing okay tonight in stable condition. I spoke to a woman who had to be evacuated earlier from the 9th floor, as well as a resident who lived across the building and watched the flames erupt, and they described a very terrifying scene. Take a listen.
And I heard people screaming and people wanted to jump, but it was like really frustrated because you want to see them be saved, right? You want them to be safe, but you can't do anything about it except wait, right?
As soon as the alarm started, we ran outside, but we couldn't go down because in the stairs there was a lot of black smoke coming up, and also the elevator was not working, so we have to stay inside the apartment and then move to the balcony and wait there for an hour.
Of course, it's also been a very tough night for all of the firefighters who were involved. This is a 15-story building housing about 700 residents. The elevator, as you just heard, out of service. So here's what Toronto Fire Chief Matthew Pegg said about the challenges earlier tonight.
The firefighters, you'll see a number of crews coming out of the building. They're exhausted. The elevators have been out for a considerable amount of time now, so they're having to manually move up and down 15 flights. 15 stories, so they're tired, they're soaking wet from the firefighting operation, and of course it's very cold tonight. So these are difficult circumstances for all of our crews.
Mayor John Tory was also here earlier talking to residents who had evacuated, as well as thanking all the fire crews who were involved. Now, the fire marshal, of course, will be investigating. There are also investigators on scene assessing the damage, and it's not known, of course, when the displaced residents will be able to return. Back to you, Talia.
Thanks, Kelda. Well, many people have been complaining about an uptick in sketchy phone calls lately. It's less than a month until a federal deadline for telecom providers to crack down on spam calls. And for many Canadians, it's needed now more than ever. Lauren Pelly looks into who's really accountable.
Scam calls seem to be getting more and more common, and they're coming from numbers claiming to be anything from a duct cleaning company to an airline to the Canada Revenue Agency.
I actually received a call this morning from the CRA saying I owed a lot of money to them, And if I didn't give it to them, I would suffer like severe repercussions.
And there's maybe, 3 of this whole list that are actually legitimate. The rest are illegitimate.
These 2 scam call victims aren't just random people we found, they're actually tech experts.
A lot of the time you feel rushed when you're called, you're induced to either give your social insurance number, your credit card number, or some type of financial details, which can be used to impersonate you.
It's easy to spoof a call, make it look like it's coming from a friend or a relative.
So who's accountable for all those sneaky scammers getting through? On one hand, there are the companies you pay to connect your calls. Then there's the federal government's Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, or the CRTC.
We have been working to combat those calls that people are receiving.
The commission set a deadline of December 19th for mobile carriers to launch call blocking technology.
We had asked them to come with innovative and creative measures.
For clear-cut scams, Bell and Rogers are bringing in universal call blocking, while TELUS is rolling out a call filtering service. Meanwhile, an American app called RoboKiller recently entered the market, offering cell phone users another way to fight scammers.
We block those calls, and then what we do is we actually answer those calls in the background with something we call answer bots. Answer bots are robots that actually talk back to the spammers and waste their time, so you can get a little revenge and get even.
But even with all those tools, it's not an easy problem to solve.
Especially because a lot of the calls originate outside of Canada.
Definitely the government should be accountable. The telcos should be accountable.
So there's also this personal accountability piece as well. If you get one of these spam calls, it's best to just not answer it. But if you do answer, make sure you don't give any personal identification, any financial details, or your SIN number. And also, don't do what they say. If they ask you to dial a certain number on your PIN pad, that could lead you to an international call with hefty charges. All of these things are things you should keep aware of. And if your gut's telling you that something seems like a spam trap, it probably is.
That was Lauren Pelly reporting. The man charged with vandalizing the old City Hall cenotaph is out on bail tonight. On Tuesday, someone spray painted the words, "Ye broke faith with us," on the front and back of the cenotaph. The words referencing the John McCrae poem In Flanders Fields. The vandalism coming the day after Remembrance Day ceremonies were held at that monument. 33-year-old Christian Zog of Toronto appeared in court earlier today. He's facing mischief charges. The Toronto woman who threw a chair over a condo balcony pleaded guilty in court today. The Crown prosecutors are seeking a maximum of 6 months in jail for Marcella Zoya. Linda Ward has the latest.
19-year-old Marcella Zoya pleaded guilty today to 1 count of mischief endangering life. Standing before the court, dressed all in black, looking solemn, she admitted she was the one seen in that viral video from back in February, holding a folding chair, peering over the balcony of a Bremner high-rise, then tossing that chair over the railing directly above Lakeshore Boulevard and the Gardner Expressway. That video was played in court today. Then the Crown said that she was seeking a maximum 6-month prison term. Now, the last time Zoya was in court back in February, she appeared not to mind the media attention. But today, she shied away from the cameras and instead jumped into a waiting vehicle. Her lawyer spoke on her behalf, reacting to the possibility of jail time.
I think that's excessive, very much so. We have to remember Marcella's 19 years of age. When you deal with somebody so young, in my opinion, they're not fully developed. The brain's not fully developed. She was still a young lady at that time. She made a mistake. I think jail is far excessive, and we'll be asking for a suspended sentence.
That means essentially probation with some conditions. He says it's important to remember that his client did turn herself into police and that she will likely face some travel restrictions to the United States that will affect her ability to work. But he's also aware that Zoya has enjoyed some notoriety on social media since the offense. The judge will likely want the sentence to reflect how dangerous this crime was, as well as deter others from seeking out their few minutes of social media stardom with similar stunts in the future. Zoya will learn her sentence back here in this court on January 14th. Linda Ward, CBC News, Toronto.
Meteorologist Colette Kennedy joins us now for a first look at our forecast, and it felt pretty mild today in comparison to what we've seen, but I'm guessing that won't stick around.
Yeah, here we go again, Talia. We've got this extreme cold weather alert because of the shot of colder air that's moving in behind this front. So, for example, I know it's not exactly balmy, but the wind chill 6 a.m. this morning was -6, whereas we're looking at tomorrow morning, that wind chill being -18 to, in some cases, as extreme as -20 or -21. So a very cold overnight and start to the day on Saturday. That after we so nicely rebounded to some temperatures climbing up to 3 degrees, still less than half where we should be at this time of year with a high around 7. I do just want to point out that although we'll be seeing some sunshine tomorrow with the wind off the lake, there may be just this little band of some flurries and extra cloud cover that will kind of rotate its way around throughout the day. So you'll have sunshine and then skies kind of changing. Otherwise, most of southern and eastern Ontario into that sun. There you go. The actual thermometer tonight reads -11, -3 tomorrow afternoon, but then a little bit of a gradual warm up coming after that. Talia, I'll fill you in on the details coming up.
All right, well, at least we get to see some sunshine. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
Condo development proposals aren't always popular as they often mark the gentrification of neighborhoods. The latest development in Chinatown has caused a stir. Ali Chiasson finds out what the community has to say.
It's kind of genius. It looks exactly like a City of Toronto development sign, like different colors, some dim sum here in bok choy, but also more importantly,
the translation. We just noticed that the sign that the city put up, the one just over there in front of Rolstan, was not translated.
The construction of a proposed mid-rise condo in the heart of Chinatown would displace 13 locally owned businesses, including ever-popular dim sum spot Rolstan. Don't you think locals should have a say?
Like, this is a predominantly Chinese-speaking neighborhood.
There is a public meeting scheduled for next Tuesday at 6 p.m., although you wouldn't know that by looking at the city's signage, and even still.
Neither the developer or the city has included translators at the public consultation meeting. We had to specifically request for them.
The city has raised some potential issues with the building. 13 stories equals a lot of people living in half a block, putting a strain on utilities, and it will cast a shadow on nearby properties. But other than that, Councillor Mike Layton says it's not out of step with what's allowed.
It's proposed rental, which is a positive by and large, but we do want to do what we can to ensure that those are livable units, that they're affordable units, and that they're accessible to people that currently live in the neighborhood as well as future new neighbors.
As for the sign,
it's nice when people use humor rather than just defacing it with graffiti.
Thinking about like the recent examples of like development in Chinatown, like the one across the street here had a lot of history to it, and then look at what's sitting there.
Yeah.
Not only is it a gray box, it's empty.
My parents, when they first immigrated here, this was like the closest thing they had to home, you know, and it's always served people like my parents and will always continue to serve people like my parents. And to see buildings like that sit there, or to see a 13-story development proposal not consider this neighborhood, it stops serving the people that it's always served.
This plaza isn't a heritage building, but this isn't about preserving architecture. It's about making and keeping space for local businesses and local people to thrive here in Chinatown. The group Friends of Chinatown TO will be out canvassing this weekend, encouraging people to take part in the public consultations and to have their say. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
We're definitely going to miss Don Cherry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Saturday night. It's part of it.
Saturday nights are going to sound a lot different. With the recent firing of Don Cherry, people are wondering who's going to take his place. We'll have more on that coming up. Like it or not, Saturday nights in Canada will never be the same. Starting tomorrow night, the post-Don Cherry era of Hockey Night in Canada begins. The outspoken analyst was fired earlier this week after making controversial comments. Greg Ross takes a look at what the future holds for Cherry's popular first intermission time slot.
For the past 38 years, he's been broadcast into millions of Canadian homes on Saturday nights. But that all changed after Don Cherry said this.
You people love you that come here, whatever it is. You love our way of life. You love our milk and honey.
Cherry was fired by Rogers Sportsnet after blaming New Canadians for a decline in poppy sales, remarks many viewed as divisive and racist. As a result, this weekend, a new era begins, and that has hockey fans divided. Will you miss Don Cherry?
Honestly, not all that much, no. I think he had his time, and maybe it's time for a fresh voice.
Not especially. You know, he was a character, but his time has come and gone.
You're definitely going to miss Don Cherry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Saturday night. It's part of it.
Don Cherry was it. Saturday night, you sit down, you watch Ron MacLean and Don Cherry.
Regardless of where they stand on the issue, TV critic Bill Brio expects they will tune in this weekend.
Everybody wants to know what's going to happen, and there'll be a lot of curiosity, and yeah, the ratings will spike this Saturday during that segment.
Many names have been rumored as possible replacements for Cherry, including a former general manager for the Leafs.
They've already got Brian Burke. There's air in the spare, right? You know, he's on the bench. He can go in.
Whoever it is, they will have big shoes to fill.
It could be a career killer. Look what happened to George Stroumboulopoulos. You know, they thought they could just drop him in as the new anchor host of Hockey Night in Canada. It was the wrong fit.
Which is why Brio thinks the best option might be to go in a completely different direction.
I think it's to be a mistake to go down the same road. It's an opportunity to relaunch, refresh, and program something that my son would want to watch.
Producers at Sportsnet have been tight-lipped about their plans for the future of the first intermission on Hockey Night in Canada. But Cherry's co-host on Coach's Corner, Ron MacLean, tweeted today that he will still be a part of it. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
And late tonight, we did get a few details from Sportsnet. They tell us it's going to explore new formats for the first intermission of Hockey Night in Canada. Tomorrow, this year's Hockey Hall of Fame inductees will be featured. Olympic gold medalist Hayley Wickenheiser headlines this year's class. We'll tell you which other hockey idols are joining her. Coming up.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Hockey superstars who got the call from the Hall months ago finally got their hardware today in the annual Hockey Hall of Fame ring presentation. Those among the class of 2019, our four-time Olympic gold medalist, Hayley Wickenheiser.
Well, being in the hall, Jim and I were just saying, like, look at all the names on the wall of a lot of these folks I didn't know, but I certainly grew up idolizing and watching in the game of hockey. I didn't have female hockey players to look up to. And so as I stand here today, I can say that that's changed a lot. And that feels really great to be amongst the best in the game and knowing that there's a place for a little girl somewhere and anywhere in the world to do the same.
Wickenheiser and 5 others will be inducted into the Hall of Fame on Monday. Joining her is Guy Carbonneau, 3-time Stanley Cup winner, and Sergei Zubov, who played 16 seasons in the NHL, and builders Jim Rutherford and Jerry York, along with Václav Nedemansky. He was the first hockey player to defect to North America from the Soviet Union.
That's yours to keep now, Václav.
Colette's back now with our extended forecast, and it was a little scary to hear -20, but hopefully it warms up for Santa on Sunday.
Yeah, it's kind of short-lived, Talia, in terms of this next shot that we're getting tonight of cold air. But yeah, wind chill making it feel like -20, so a little bit scary because, in fact, it's dangerous when we see that, and that's why the extreme cold weather alert is in place because of the very chilly air tonight. Now, easterly winds to northeasterly tomorrow means there could be a little bit of lake effect, extra cloud cover in a few pockets or flurry activity. I'll sort of fill you in on the details of that. And yes, Santa is coming to town, and when he does for his parade, there's going to be plenty of sunshine and a tiny bit of a warm-up for him too. Here's a look at that outlook. So this takes you into 7 a.m. and see how there's some cloud cover, a little bit of pink you're seeing there, a little mixed precip as that northeasterly to easterly wind kind of coming in. So it's not long-lived, it's not around for much, but it won't put in accumulations. You just may get a little bit of flurry activity kind of mixing with some light showery activity into your skies there, coming around Hamilton, Burlington region, and then kind of eventually pushing up towards the GTA. But otherwise, if you look at eastern and southern Ontario, high pressure's in place. It's not an active weather day, and there's all kinds of sunshine to go around, and that's what carries into Sunday as well. And with Sunday with a little bit of warmth, I mean, still way below seasonal, but just a little bit of warmth, it's going to be a really nice day to end off our weekend. Overnight tonight for southwestern Ontario, -11 to -14. In terms of your wind chills with -6 and a few spotty sprinkles mixing with some flurry activity there, but very little, no accumulations. And then -1 to 1 for you tomorrow afternoon in Windsor with some variable skies there. And yes, feeling at times like as much as -20. And these temperatures, -11, that we'll be seeing -12 for Markham, St. Catharines, -10 overnight. So a very cold start on Saturday. And then into the afternoon, this is about the best we'll do, kind of picking it up into that range, still hanging below seasonal and still hanging below freezing. But we get above it on Sunday. 1 degree is our high. And then look at our trend. Gentle as she goes, but at least it's going in the right direction as we get into next week, Talia.
And at least we got some sunshine for Santa.
That's right, because we've all been on his nice list.
That's right. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
For some, Christmas means a stocking full of gifts. But for many in more remote communities, that may not be the case. A program called Toys for the North is trying to change that, donating more than $100,000 worth of toys to kids in northern Canada.
Oh, it's excellent. It's a lot of fun. It's great to see all these toys.
The program's objective is to deliver toys to some of Canada's most remote northern communities who can otherwise not afford or access children's toys, so they get toys for the holiday season. All of the toy companies donate toys to the program at no cost. The toys are then flown on a Hercules to communities in northern Canada. Each toy is individually wrapped by the RCMP. And then, just like Santa, the RCMP works with councils, band leaders, elders, and other community organizations to identify families in need. And they are hand-delivered to families in those communities so they get toys for the holiday season.
On helping pack toys to donate to kids who don't have enough money to afford toys.
The families really appreciate the toys. It really does bring smiles to the children's faces, joys to their family, and really does make them have a much happier holiday season.
And that's our show for you tonight. Thanks for watching. Maribel Tarouk has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6. Good night.